My name's Monk Rowe. I'm very pleased to have Doug Carn with me this afternoon from Florida. Congratulations on your career so far.
Well, thank you.
I'm wondering, when you were young, let's say your teen years, around 15, had you already chosen music as your career or as what you wanted to pursue, or did you have other choices?
I had another choice, but I'd already chosen music a long time ago
Mhm.
when I was about 8 years old. But I got a full scholarship in '63 to the U.S. Air Force Academy out in Colorado. Uh, I was going to I was going to be an astronaut, I guess, but they gave me a full scholarship, but I turned it down. I said, no, I'm going to play music.
So you would have been around 15 years old then.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did your mother, who was a music teacher, did she agree with that choice?
of course. You know, she almost named me Jerome. That way I would have been Jerome Carn, like Jerome Kern.
Oh, yes.
Took me to the Philharmonic rehearsals while I was still in the womb. What's she gonna do all of that and uh, you know, uh, get a German music teacher to teach me piano lessons and stuff, and then launch my ass in space. Oh no, you can play the piano. And
I,
another thing, a lot of people don't realize, see, when you come up in the Black church, especially a prominent Black church, to play on special events and even on Sundays between 500 and 1,000 people and get applause and smiles and kudos, that's a big deal. It's a big deal now. Most of the major clubs in the world only have seat 200 or 300 people. And so it wasn't no big deal for me going before audience with 200 people, 250 people, or going in the basement at the Vanguard, uh, you know, I
yeah,
mean, I didn't think it like that.
you had already played
Yeah,
between some big crowds.
yeah, right.
Is that where you got your first organ experience, in the church?
Yes, playing a real church organ. Uh, then we got a Hammond, but my mother majored in music and church music. You know, she was back there with Mrs. Uh, Matta Willa Dobbs and them sisters and Miss Rebecca Steele and all them heavyweights, you know. And these average organ players, they don't know what a diapason is. They really not organ players. They are not piano players either. They somebody with keyboard skills, and they want to get the organ sound. So they, got a keyboard and learn how to play left hand bass. But they not no organ players.
Yeah,
They
I was
can't.
just going to ask about left-hand bass because it's a passion of mine, and I was watching you on a video that someone did in their home, and you were really wailing on the B3, and you were doing the left-hand bass, and it's
Mhm.
a powerful feeling because you can really control the music. You're the bass player and the soloist and the chordal person.
No different from Johann Sebastian Bach. I keep trying to tell these idiots, you got to build on accumulative knowledge, that you can't reinvent the wheel yourself.
Do you think differently or play different? Well, I'm going to say, do you think differently when you have a bass player?
Well, yes, yes, you do.
How,
You think
how
differently.
so?
Well, it's just like being a pianist. You think different from when you play solo piano than when you play with the orchestra, you know. You think differently. But you play the same, but you think different, you know. They say you have more freedom with a bass player, but you're in a wider arena anyway, you know. So thinking different is powerful, of course. It's a negative sum game, you know.
Yeah. I understand you were in a group called the New Tones when you were
Yeah,
young.
that was a group I had in junior high and high school because you had to make money. You needed money in your pocket as a young man, and that was just what I kind of naturally did. So I put a band together, and we got some uniforms and started playing shows, proms and socials in the immediate area in the region,
Can you name a few tunes that would have been on your song list?
Well, yeah, some of them was straight jazz, like we played Misty, we played Red Top, we played Blue Moon, we played How High the Moon, we played uh, the Work Song, we played a couple of Horace Silvers, you know, that was out in the late 50s. But then we played Twist and Shout, the Isley Brothers, played a little Wilson Pickett, Midnight Hour, little Otis Redding. We played what the people wanted to hear.
I understand that group, if I'm correct, auditioned to be on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour.
Yeah, we did. That was the day that Kennedy got killed, man. We
Oh,
was on our way to Jacksonville, and they said our version of Blue Moon was too jazzy, you know. But nobody was in a good mood. But it wasn't too jazzy. Our Blue Moon gonna be too jazzy. Now, if I had played it like Ornette Coleman might have played it, yeah, you could say that. But it was danceable,
yeah.
you know. But nobody was in a good mood. But I don't think they was going to give it to nobody black during that time,
I
in
see.
Jacksonville, Florida. But
Well,
yeah, we on our way to Jacksonville, and seems like we heard it on the radio. So we stopped at the first gas station, and a lot of people had stopped, and they had a television in there. And we went in there, and the owners gave us orange juice, and that was a place that didn't serve black people, but everybody was acting like a human being on that day, I guess, except the people that was happy that Kennedy got shot, but they didn't come in there. But then we had to leave to be there on time for the audition, and they didn't like it.
it was a little too out for them, I suppose, at the time. What
Yeah.
what do you remember from your years? You mentioned that they weren't ready for a black group. Did you experience during your early music careers with being segregated from certain parts of your town or society?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of incidents, but nothing that would break the spirit. I tell you, once we played at the YMCA downtown, you know, so we was the first black band, quote unquote, to play at the white YMCA. And I think this was 61, and so maybe 62. So we playing at the white YMCA. So I'm playing white records, and the main thing was the Beatles. because the Beatles were the hot new thing, and some of the Beatles things I really liked, by the time of Sergeant Pepper's, you could say I was a Beatles fan, but I liked some of the stuff they was doing. And the kids didn't dance to any of it except when we played Twist and Shout. And if I was thinking that was an Isley Brothers song, so who was a black group, so they danced to that. So during the break, we went in the little room they had for us with Coca-Colas and fruit and sandwiches and stuff. So the director and a couple of the students came back there, and the director said, Mr. Doug, your band is very good and professional and sounds real good. But do you think when you go back, you could play some of your people's music? So the girl said, James Brown. And the boy said, oh, it's ready, and they start calling all these black groups names. So I figured out what it was they wanted, So the director said, look, Doug, I could lose my job, I'm going out on a limb, bringing a black group here, and y'all out there playing the goddamn Beatles. Now you go back out there and play some of your music, your stuff like you're supposed to do. So we went out there and did you make me want to shout, shout. Well, they love that, And,
That's a great story. Do you suppose that the white kids were hearing most of that from the radio stations, or were they actually buying
yeah,
the
they listen to our end of the radio station. I figured they listen to their end, I even figured they listen to that stuff, but they listen to that more than they listen. Now, I knew who Ferlin Husky was. I knew who the Big Bopper was. I certainly knew who Ricky Nelson was, and I knew who Tammy Wynette was. And, you know, I knew these people, some of them, and but they knew all our people. They were big fans of Sam Cooke,
Mm-hmm.
And so I never did figure that I was playing for white folks. I think I thought I was playing for upwardly progressive black people, And even when they got to be real serious, deep jazz, it was kind of the same thing, All in the big cities and up north, there's more black people into it per se. A great deal of the fans were white, and I found that really interesting, even to this day, it's like that whole new generation, actually a third generation, in my case, of white kids are in the real jazz, So it's quite weighty and substantial in its substance and essence,
Wonderful. The music that you were playing at that time, at some point, did you decide, instead of going down this pop music road, I have something I want to say in the jazz world?
Right, because this is the thing. I had said all of that through high school, you know, like it's just the nearness of you, you know. Uh, but the substance of the song and the lyrics is the same as some of these uh, R&B songs. Baby, let me get close to you, I mean, it's romantic, It's just on on a higher level. Yeah. But the problem was I wanted to play, I just didn't want to play songs, So I said, well, maybe I'll write some songs the way that I would like to play them, the type that I would like to play. And my mom's had a bunch of books, poetry books, you know, by Yeats and Keats and different people. And, you know, I've read those, you know. All she would do was leave a book laying around, and I would open it up like it was a piece of candy, you know, because I was kind of motivated by the way they tricked me into reading encyclopedias, you know. They told me that all of mankind's accumulated knowledge was in these books, you know, and I believed it. It took me about a year to do it, and I didn't say nothing, you know. I just read it, and slowly by slowly, I found out there were many things that my parents, being school teachers, did not know. You know, they didn't know how air conditioning worked, you know. So many things they didn't know. But, you know, I wrote my own lyrics because I wanted to push the music forward. Because even when I came along, you know, Misty and High High the Moon and Oleo, all of them songs was old tunes in, you know. Uh, 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 Satin Dawn was an old song in 1962, you know.
Yeah, that's very interesting how we we have different definitions of old.
Right. And then
Some, yeah,
they say, man, that music is old. I said, man, that music ain't old. Uh, you think that's old? What about Shostakovich's 10th Symphony? What about you know, uh, German leader, you know, and Mozart? That's old, you know. You know, what about Gregorian chant? That's old. Brahms, it was an old man who used to hang around the college that knew Brahms, you know. Ravel was still alive before World War One, you know.
mhm.
So that ain't old. Y'all don't know what's old, you know. And then now they call it Earth, Wind, and Fire, old school, you know.
Yeah,
They said they're the most modern, popular band that ever existed.
right.
So old, you know. The stuff y'all doing now as a backdrop to hip hop, you know, is uh is barely music.
It's barely music because why?
Because they took music out of the curriculum of the public school system, you know, and the children don't know any music. You know, they don't know any music. It's a miracle that they have accomplished what they accomplished. You know, if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the black churches, you know, to be totally null and void.
Mhm. When I read about your music from the 70s, especially, whoever is writing it, I don't know if it's you or over the years management, they they mentioned that spiritual jazz, spiritual music. And I'd like to know if that's the way you thought of it yourself. Did you think of it as spiritual, and was that part of your
But
direction?
that was, but that was the trend doing then, you know, because the civil rights movement was in full swing, you know. And then it was Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was a preacher. That's spiritual, you know. Uh, Muhammad Ali, and you know, he had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You know, that was uh, spiritual, you know. And then we had what else did we have? Coltrane,
Coltrane.
you know, and he was a cat, and Miles is very deep in spiritual. He didn't use spiritual titles, you know, but his music was almost sacred, you know, some of it, a great deal of it, you know. And But the thing is, I just want to interject while I'm thinking so I won't forget. The way these interviews and conversations go, it seems like the whole world revolves around black white issues, but they don't, there's a lot of Asian people that play good classical music and jazz, but uh, that's what we talk about in terms of black white issues because the conflict and tension centers around that, So,
How do
that's
you think that conflict, is it different now
no,
than it was in the 70s?
no, it ain't no different. You know, the white man and the black man playing 7 Up. The black man win the money, but scared to pick it up. No, it ain't no different. You know, the musicians do all the work and all the creativity, mostly black, and the white folks do the management and the set the agendas and all of that, and do the recording, own a company, control the distribution, and they make all the money. Now they give you a lot of money if you sell completely out and play something that complements a way of life that's more conducive to the status quo than to black enlightenment. They'll give you money. They don't care about the money. The only thing they care about is saying that you are equal to them, which they don't want to do. But getting back on track to where we was coming from. So I wrote these lyrics and it was down with the times, It just happened to be that time. See, I did the songs I did, Lil B's poem, Infinite, Love Supreme, uh, Peace, and Passion Dance, and one of my originals. All those songs have been played before, you know, but they had been played in a group setting that showed that much consideration and thought, and it was during the Black Power movement. So I put on a dashiki and took the picture, But I could have played that same music in a 3-piece suit and a necktie,
Good point.
It would have had a different tone,
Mhm.
But Lee's poem, Bobby Hutcherson, he had played that, And I tell you, Bobby Hutcherson ended up having to play my arrangement of Lil B's poem. As it worked out, with that intro, ba da ba ba do ba da ba do ba da do ba ba da ba, because he had played many shows, and people would ask him, "Hey, did you write Lil B's poem?" And he said, "Yeah, I wrote it." He says, "Play that." So he started going da 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 da. They said, "No, that ain't how it go. You got da 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 da." So they started playing. He went and got Joey DeFrancesco to play it on organ. Thought it was the organ that made it sound like that, But it wasn't that. It was the way that me and Michael Carvin interpreted it, because see, it's in 3/4 time, so it's easier to interpret it as a waltz, ba ba da ba da ba ba da da ba da ba da. But we interpret it as ba ba da ba da ba ba da ba da ba ba do be ba. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know
I
what I mean?
see. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just watched him play it with Cedar Walton
yeah,
on a video the other day.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, um, you know, I put a lot of thought in it, and to tell people you spend a great deal of your time thinking they can't get to that, you know.
Hmm.
No, they can't get to that. You're supposed to be spending a great deal of your time putting stress on your back and lifting weight, you know.
The
Like,
people that were recording a great deal in the mid 70s, there was a lot of heavy duty fusion with Herbie Hancock and Mahavishnu, Weather Report.
yeah. Well, see,
Where-
Miles always led the way. See, he got tired of playing the same thing anyway. Everywhere he go, they said, "Play My Funny Valentine," you know. He didn't want to play that no more. And Miles was very fashion oriented, you know, and the styles are changing, you know. And you know, for what it's worth, the music was changing too, you know. So he said in a silent way, I'm a, you know, change, you know. He knew what the barometer was, you know, because I tell you, I took bitches brew as a joke, you know, almost, you know. I we put on bitches brew and roll a big fat joint and put the color wheel on and strobe light on and have go for a ride. But when I actually played the music with Wallace Roney, I could see the dimensions in it, you know, just like classical music, you know, da 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 da, you know, you know, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so I said, wait a minute, you know, and so much of it sounded like sketches of Spain, you know, and through all that change, Miles actually played the same way, you know. You know, if you listen to what Miles is actually playing, but yeah, man, you gotta. The only thing inevitable is change, and change is the last thing you want to do, you know. You know, but after a while, you gotta change, you know. You gotta adapt, you know.
Yeah, he was always ahead of the curve, and I'm always fascinated that he was able to fashion the music to his own strengths and weaknesses in his playing.
What weakness, Miles? And
Touche.
I know what you said.
You got me.
I know what you said. Yeah, but Miles was advantaged because he was rich. You know, he was born rich, so he wasn't under pressure. You know, so he could be creative the way he could. But he didn't smile, but he was really a down to earth brother. You know, for real cat. You know.
Well, that's a good point. I wonder, was the music that you created of your own, did it have something to do with what your economic situation was like?
No, no, no. It didn't have nothing to do with that. It was just cultural, you know. You know. But see, the thing is, see, a lot of these musicians and athletes too, and other people too, they grew up and get rich because they grew up poor, you know. Now, I didn't grow up poor, but I probably wasn't far from it, you know, especially based on the day standard, you know. But see, if you grew up in a family with parents that love you and care for you, and you live in a decent house, you eat good food, and you wear nice clothes, and you drive a nice car. It might not be a Cadillac, but it's usually brand new or almost brand new. You know, you eat good food, you know, and then you got to hustle on the side. You know, we did a lot of fishing, and then I had the band. But even when I was a kid, 8, 9 years old, I would sell soda water bottles to get a deposit, you know. You know, I kept me some change in my pocket. And then how you gonna have a 4 point average and be poor, you know? That's the last thing I was complaining about. We didn't have enough money, you know. But I didn't want a pony, you know.
Mm.
I didn't want a horse, you know. But I guess if I wanted one, they would have bought me one and just stay at the stable. Then I
Yeah.
go there and ride them. They couldn't buy me an airplane, I'm sure, but I could take lessons, you know, and learn how to fly, you know. Uh,
I wanted to ask you before I forget, did you think it was really hip that your mother played with Dizzy Gillespie a couple times?
extremely hip. And she didn't tell me that until I got older, you know. I was probably about 40
Oh,
when she even told me that, you know. But what had happened was that she was in Harlem. She'd go up to Harlem and during the summer and stay with Uncle T, which is my granduncle, and grandmama's brother, and work, you know. But she would also go up there to go to Juilliard, which I didn't know, you know. But she got in the summer program that she could go to Juilliard and rehearse, you know. Uh, yeah, she had a friend that uh, in the talent show at the Apollo, and so Mama played for, her, and the girl won, and Dizzy was one of the judges, and so Dizzy played her accompaniment and invited her to a gig of his. I think it was at the Harlem YMCA. Anyway, but she went and the piano player did the show. So the guy was acting like he didn't want to pay this because he didn't have a band. And so they said, there's a piano player right there. Come on, baby. So my mama made the gig. Then she made another one. Then he called her again and she wouldn't go because I was sick, you know. So he didn't call her no more after that, you know.
I like that term. My mama made the gig.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's terrific.
She
You
made,
know,
and then she was gigging anyway. Uh, as a matter of fact, my first gig was with the band she was with before I started the New Tones, you know, because she could read music. So if they wanted to play All the Things You Are or Stella by Starlight, she would play it correctly. And she knew that you played it in the chords and over again, the same structure. But they kept being after her about soloing, you know. And she didn't want to solo. She didn't want to improvise. She didn't want to play something and not know what she was playing. She was that kind of musician, you know, that I'm not playing nothing that don't know what I'm playing. That wasn't her point of view, you know.
how did that work for you? Did you stumble into improvising because it was required, or did you really seek it out beforehand?
The one and the same, you know, it was part of it, you know. As a matter of fact, uh, I didn't know it was improvising like Bags Groove, like when Miles said, but da bwee dwee bop bop, but do boo baby do bop bop, boo boo doo da da. You know, I didn't know that was necessarily improvised. You know, as a matter of fact, I hadn't really seen a lead sheet until after I had written Infinite. You know, we was just playing, and then after a while, you realize they were soloing, and because see, most people they don't improvise off the song anyway. They improvise off the chord changes. For instance, like you said, well, let's play Straight No Chaser. And you say, okay, well, Straight No Chaser is a blues, you know. So you play Straight No Chaser, then when the solos start, you know, they might as well be playing every day. I have the blues or anything, you know, but they're not improvising off Straight No Chaser. Because see, if you was improvising off Straight No Chaser, you'd say dee da dee da ba da 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 ba de dee ba dee ba dee ba dee ba. You know, like the melody ba do ba do de do ba do ba dee ba. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
like you almost turned it upside down.
yeah. You improvise off the melody and the chords, but they just improvise off the chords. This is why they can steal each other's music with the same chord changes. Like take Indiana and make it Donna Lee, you know. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I said, man, you know something? Y'all don't know nothing about music, you know. They said, who you think you are, little Negro from St. Augustine, Florida, you know? You don't know Dooley. I said, I might not, but I know about music. Y'all don't know nothing about music. You know, then I bowed my head and backed off, you know. But you know, that's the thing, you know. So but then yeah, I realized you improvise, but actually, and Gary Bartz taught me this, you're not really improvising, you are composing, you know. It's just quick work, just like spontaneous artwork, you know,
Mhm.
when they paint a picture, you know, just you know, you paint it as fast, you know, but it's like a beep beep boop boop dee bee dee boo beep bee dee bee dee boo dee bee dee boo doo dee boo doo dee boo doo bee boo boo doo dee dee boo doo 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 dee doo doo. You know, you're not really, you know, you are creating, you're actually writing music, and that's another beef that I got with the industry. You know, you do a song and the soloists don't get paid for what they're doing. They said, well, Brubeck wrote it. Green wrote the tune. Coleman Hawkins just played it. But see, when you buy a jazz record, you buy the record to hear what solos the guys took, you know, not just two choruses of the melody. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're not getting
So,
any writer's credit for the
right,
improvising.
right. So they do take five, right? And then that solo that Joe Morello took, he don't get no money for that. You know,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I
And
do.
those 52 choruses of Crescendo Diminuendo that Paul Gonzalez played, he don't get no money for that. You know what I mean? And all the great solos, you know, all that stuff Train played on my favorite things. You know, Rogers and Hammerstein get all of that money, you know, as if they wrote it, you know. And but see where it came from was way back in the day before my Bye Bye Blackbird and them other songs, you know, and Tiger Rag and stuff. You know, you play the record and that little stuff you do in between, like an ad lib, wasn't that considerable, even though it was. They just let that go and pass that on, but you still playing Irving Berlin's song, you know. But after the swing era came in, and especially bebop, they started adding more music to the composition than the composition had in the first place.
A
You
couple
know,
years ago, someone wrote a nice article about you, a fellow named Aaron Cohen, uh,
yeah,
Doug Carn's big moment. And there's a quote from you in it. It said, my plan is you better get out of the way because I'm tired of holding back. And I wonder if at various times in your career, did you feel that you were held back from what you really
Yeah,
wanted to do?
yeah, I feel like that right now because they got it as entertainment only, you know. Because if you look at those trees that they have with the roots of jazz, down at the bottom they got Satchmo and Bix Beiderbecks, and then they got the different people,
Mm-hmm.
and they come on up there with Bonnie Bregard and
Jelly Roll Morton and those
yeah,
guys.
all them people, and they come on up. Then they get the bebop days, pre-bebop, But I'm telling you, Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis Jr., uh, Miles Davis, uh, even Sinatra's Tony Bennett, but we focusing on the black ones, and Dexter Gordon and Doug Carn and all the rest of us. We're on that same tree. We just another jigaboo, which is a high level of the fruit off the same tree, is the way they look at it. And that so at any given night, they say, well, Trent, what we gonna open up, you know. So I don't know. Stan, let's do some all the things you are, 180 miles away in Vegas. Sammy said, well, why don't we open up with all the things you are now, you know? And then New York, Dexter Gordon kicks it off. They all playing the same tune, drinking the same whiskey, you know, eating the same steaks, you know, competing for the same dollar. And they say, yeah, man, but them guys in the big band in Vegas and Reno and Tahoe, they can't play like the cats can. I said, the hell they can't, you know. You don't know what you're talking about. Sal Nistico and Curtis Pegler and them boys, you know. I didn't know that Al Cohen played so well.
Mm-hmm.
So modern sounding. Because I've been seeing his name a long time since I was in high school. And then I said, that's Al Cohen, because he could play like Dexter Gordon, you know. And I said, man, them guys can play. They just rather make the money and live in a house, you know, and send their kids to college. Because a lot of the people, I had to say, but now don't get me wrong, you call it the chitlin circuit, is a very nutritious chitlin, that they could send their daughters and sons to college and buy cars and houses. See, some people ain't good with money anyway, you know, but it's all the same thing. But you gotta worry about the people and love them, or you don't. And sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. But
Do you think you made decisions along your career that cost you money, but you stuck
yeah,
with your artistic
yeah.
vision?
I hate to see those interviews. They say, well, look, just tell me if you had to do it all over again, would you do the same thing? And they say, well, yeah, really, I'd do the same thing. But I wouldn't, you know, if I know what I know now, I would do the same thing. But they don't want to admit that they weren't perfect, or they still want to imagine that life was idealized for them. If I had to do the same thing over again, I wouldn't do it the same way. Hell no.
I'm always surprised when I learn about musicians that I listened to and read about when growing up, And in some cases, I got to meet them and to find out that they would play gigs that I would never imagine, that they would play weddings, uh,
Yeah,
because everybody's got to make a buck.
right. And then too, I'm gonna tell you the honest truth, man. There's nothing wrong with playing a wedding. I played a wedding in 2012 with the same band I had in uh, Dizzy's Coca-Cola, because the guy was a friend of mine, and he was a fan of mine, and he loved jazz, and he wanted a real jazz group at his daughter's wedding. So we played it.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with playing a miscellaneous wedding for miscellaneous people, for miscellaneous money, under miscellaneous circumstance? But a good wedding, like Oscar Peterson played for Prince Charles and Diana's wedding, or the reception, I would have played that gig in a minute.
Am I correct that you adopted the Muslim religion at some point?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Was there something in society that was happening at the time, or
I'll tell you right now before you ask me.
okay?
No, what it is, it was the idea, the clarity of the the oneness of God. To me, God is singular, and has no partners. And Christianity, well, Judaism is that way. It's just God, that's it. But Christianity got three gods. Now they say it's one God, but in three parts. And then the one part is his son, and one part is the Holy Spirit. But I don't think Almighty God would need a son. What do you need a son for? You Almighty, merciful. You Almighty, He's perfectly capable of saving you, of showing mercy. He made the sun and the moon and the stars and everything else. He's perfectly capable of redeeming you if you need redemption. So, that's it. And but I found that its good aspects are mostly religion. Hinduism, they got a trinity too, but then they got many other gods. But it's not a catch-22 word, but it's a loaded word, because whatever the name of the deity is, the Most High, it wouldn't be in English or any language of human beings anyway, because God is above a human being, way above. I think it was Muhammad, peace be upon him, that asked somebody. They was out one night. He said, "Hey man," I said, "Yeah, what?" So you see all that out there? He said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you think is easy to make? To make that or to make you?" And he's had to say to make me, than to make all that. And he didn't have the slightest clue how much that was, how far it was, how huge it was.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'd like to before we're done here, I want to just ask you about the last few years. It's been interesting because some of your music from the 70s has been revisited, and now they're calling it classic. And at the same time, you got hooked up with the two fellows from the Jazz is Dead label, and I just find it an interesting pairing.
Well, that's the biggest trick that's been played on me in my life. Yeah. They said, "Look, man, we got some hip hop tracks. We want you to dub you on a couple of them. Gary Bart's going to do some, and Roy Ayers going to do some." I said, "Okay, how much you going to pay me?" So we agreed on a price, but they didn't say the name of the label going to be Jazz is Dead. and we promoting a concept named Jazz is Dead. They didn't say nothing about that. I didn't know nothing about that until I came out. Now, when I say trick me, I don't mean a dirty stab in the back trick, you know. They just didn't say nothing about it, you know. And it didn't rattle me too much, you know. But we play a gig and we go in the auditorium and all these Jazz is Dead posters all over the world, all over the walls. And it was kind of discouraging, you know, but, you know, they intelligent young men, they clean cut, and I give them a break. But I tell any young people, older people too, if you're going to tear something down and destroy it, make sure you got something to replace it with.
Good
You know,
point.
yeah,
It's
but
interesting that they didn't tell you about that because it seems like it was a calculated move.
it was calculated, and a lot of my jazz fans, it hurt them, you know, and they thought that I had sold out, you know. I said, well, if I sold out, I sold out for free because I ain't got the money, you know. But but they've been saying jazz is dead a long time, you know, just like they said God is dead, you know, ever since fusion came in, you know.
Yeah,
They,
every couple of years you see it in the jazz magazines, and I think it's just like, okay, it's time to write about that again, and
yeah,
it's
because
just
they,
something to write about.
like, because in the 70s, when fusion started, they were saying jazz is dead, but then here come Wynton Marsalis, you know, playing more jazz than anybody ever played, you know,
Mhm.
and all these young people and jazz programs in colleges and universities. You know, that's the thing about America and a free society. It's free speech, you know, and people can say what they want to say and believe what they want to be, and you can't get bent out of shape. You know, if jazz is dead, then classical music got to be dead a long time. But Beethoven, Bach, and Brahms, they're just as big as they ever were, you know, especially in Europe, you know.
Do you think that jazz education, sort of the explosion of it in the last 20 years, has been a good thing for the music?
Well, well, in a way, see, the music is very broad and there have many aspects to it, you know. In one aspect, it's been making it accessible to musicians who ordinarily wouldn't access it, you know. Then on the other hand, it's making it kind of mundane and dry to people who loved it enough to run away from home and move to New York and sleep on the floor in an apartment in the village and hang out to 2 or 3 in the morning and follow Kenny Garrett around, you know, and follow Mike Brecker around, and you know, follow, you know, you know,
Who did you follow around?
Jimmy Smith. I followed all the organ players, every last one of them. Uh, Groove Holmes, Jimmy Smith, Mike Duff, Dr. Lonnie Smith, uh, Shirley Scott. My uncle was good friends with Shirley and Stan, and you know, Trudy Pitts, Jimmy McGriff. I followed every one of them. You know, I knew how they set up the organ, what kind of tubes they played using the organ. You know, some of them didn't know what kind they was using themselves, you know.
Yeah.
I followed all the organ players.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to revisit. We had a start to this interview that we had to redo, and I had
Well,
mentioned the sometimes I feel like a motherless child from your very first record.
Yeah,
And
Joey D. Francesco recorded that one too.
Mhm.
I was sad that he had to pass away so early.
Yes.
And
Well, it was
sing.
a beautiful recording, and it sounded like, like you were in church.
Well, the organ is a church instrument. That's why black people love it so much. You know, certain black people don't like organ. They didn't like it because they felt that it kept them in that uh, old school uh, church blues idiom, and they wanted to go forward. I said, well, you ever heard Larry Young Jr.? They said, oh, yeah, I heard that noise and all that wild stuff. I said, yeah, but it's stuff like Unity and Into Something and other ones that he did too. They try to hold you to one bag when you play jazz. But then the whole Van Cliburn and the one bag playing classical music. He can play Rachmaninoff or Debussy, because that's Van Cliburn. But if you go outside the established parameters that they got for you, then you done sold out or change.
Mhm.
And they want to see you play until you die on the stage.
Yeah. Well, you've shared
Uh,
a lot of knowledge with me today, Mr. Carn, and I really appreciate it.
all right.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you.